Hey, late to the party as per usual, but I just saw Rogue One just this last weekend. And I'm somewhat notorious for absolutely fucking hating Episode 7 and thinking it was quite possibly the worst Star Wars movie ever made. Worse than the prequels in a lot of ways, but, redeeming in enough ways that feels like going a stretch too far, right? But I just saw Rogue One, and I think it is quite possibly the best Star Wars movie that has ever been made. So, to say that I'm just some EU fanboy who resents Disney is not necessarily the case, and it could be the fact that despite an Academy Award-winning writer and J.J. Abrams, whom I used to love, being the writers, and J.J. Abrams being the director of Episode 7, it's a cinematic fucking atrocity. And the main thing is not in the usual gripes. I don't give a shit that Episode 7 is kind of a rehash of Episode 4. And I don't give a shit that Rey is Mary Sue and is unreasonably powerful and just is her own built-in Deus Ex Machina, and fucking just gets out of everything for free by having ultra powers out of nowhere. I don't even care about that. What I care about is that nothing, and I mean nothing, is explained in Episode 7. Part of the reason why Rogue One works very well is because Rogue One doesn't have the responsibility of presenting a new storyline to us. We already know what's at stake. When the absolutely brilliant and should just fucking sweep the Oscars cinematography and special effects for Rogue One kicks in, we immediately know that we're looking at a Star Destroyer, and it's beautifully shot, but we know it's at stake that Star Destroyer is there. And when we see the big fucking coming across the sunlight horizon shots of the Death Star, we know it's at stake. We know what that is. We know who is running this thing, and we know what they're about to do with it. So, Star Wars Rogue One suffers from some of the same problems that Episode 7 does, and that's what keeps it from being a perfect movie, honestly. And that is that the characters are incredibly weak. We don't really know who these people are. We don't exactly know where they came from. Forrest Whitaker's really strange character. We don't know exactly why he's doing what he's doing. We're never really told exactly why. You know what? Here's the really amusing thing. I didn't go and look at IMDb, okay? I actually don't remember a single character's name from this movie. That's how little the characters talk and interact, and I'm not 100% sure that a few of the characters' names are ever even said. But the great thing is it doesn't really matter, because what Rogue One is presenting to us is not an action-adventure story. It's not presenting us a character drama. It's not presenting us a monomyth at all. This movie's presenting to us almost like a period piece. It comes off more like a Saving Private Ryan than it does a Star Wars traditional episode, which is probably part of the reason why it was not at all presented as that it was presented very clearly as this is kind of a side story. It's its own thing. It's a one-shot. And because it doesn't pretend it being something it's not, that it doesn't really try to give us any sort of real character drama, except for a couple points in the movie, it just gives us an action film, more akin to, say, a Jason Bourne movie or a Tom Cruise film, where we're just dumped into the action and we're following a very specific set of events that have a very specific consequence that we're already aware of. And because of that, the film is allowed to just show us an absolutely tremendous spectacle and a triumph of CGI. And not just a triumph of CGI, but a triumph of cinematography. Every shot is framed beautifully. Most of the time, the lighting is damn near perfect. The color palette could use a little bit more variance. But the cinematographer seems to be aware of, like, hey, I'm shooting in a bunch of sand, or hey, I'm shooting in something that's pitch black, and gives us something more to it. Whether it's the film is giving us a really cool scene, a set scene where it's like, oh, it's this crazy rocky planet and it's raining and there's lightning everywhere, and fucking, it's the secret base with this cool platform with these characters, and shit's about to happen. There's fucking X-Wings coming in. And every single time, the scene in Rogue One is setting up a tremendous amount of tension that is properly explained just in just real short little goes. Like, hey, this is the guy here who built the Death Star thing. This girl wants to reach out to him because he's her father, and she believes that he's still loyal to the rebellion, that she wants to rescue him. And then this guy says, I've been given orders to kill him, but I'm not sure I should. And then, you know, they have a breakdown in communication, which is somewhat convenient, but works for what we're being shown. And that's the tension of girl tries to save, you know, the guy who made the Death Star. Guy's trying to kill guy who made the Death Star. And no matter what they choose, they can't stop the rebellion from coming and bombing the shit out of the area anyways. And that constant, properly set up and properly understood tension is exactly what Episode 7 fails at. Episode 7 has the responsibility of explaining these new characters to us, and they fail. We got Finn, who is one part cowardly C-3PO clone and one part John Rambo, who I think has the highest fucking death toll in the fucking entire movie besides Kylo Ren. Like, he wrecks tons of people. And people he grew up with, and it's not explained exactly why he turns on them. And then he's hitting on Rey like he's romantically interested in her, but then he's platonically nice to her, and then he has some really kind of homoerotic Top Gun style buddy-buddy with this guy Poe Dameron, who shouldn't trust him, but does because he saved his life. And, you know, and then the stakes, you know, like the opening crawl of Episode 7 is like, okay, there are these First Order cunts, and they want Luke Skywalker really bad. And they found this map, but then the good guys get the map, and that's where we are. And none of the movie has anything to do with Luke Skywalker. And in fact, none of the movie seems to explain exactly why it's so important to find Luke Skywalker. I mean, we see like a, you know, spoiler alert, flashback sequence that shows that Luke Skywalker may, yet again, be the only Jedi left alive because Kylo Ren... Sorry, there's a boat passing by. Kylo Ren fucking betrays the Jedi Order to the Knights of Ren, who we don't know who the fuck they are, and then joins the First Order, who's apparently like not the Empire, it's somebody else, but that's not explained. And hey, they have this, you know, forget the Death Star, forget any of the shit from the video games, like the Star Forge or any of that shit. So they have a planet, and the core of the planet is actually a big fucking gun that eats suns. So this planet eats its own sun, which, I mean, I'm sure that any kind of people who are, you know, went to school for physics or astronomy who watched that scene, probably their heads exploded right in the theater. Okay, so it eats its own sun. This planet eats its own sun and then destroys 3 other planets that are an indeterminate space away with forget hyperspeed, it's a fucking like teleportation weapon that shoots plasma and blows up these 3 planets. Which 3 planets? We don't know who those 3 planets were. We don't know why they were specifically targeted or why like more than one planet was targeted. We have no idea what's going on. See, the major sin of Episode 7 is whenever you like look at a character like, oh hey Rey, how come you're so powerful? Nobody knows, nobody says. How come she knows how to drive a ship when she's never been off Jakku? Nobody knows, nobody says. You know, how come she can mind control people? Nobody knows, nobody says. How come Ben Solo calls himself Kylo Ren instead of Darth something or other? Nobody knows, nobody says. Who are the Knights of Ren? They say he's the leader of the Knights of Ren, but to me it looks like Kylo Ren is just some like trainee that's in like probation mode, and that he has no authority, and you know, he's constantly, any of his ideas of what to do are constantly overshot by either Commander Snoke, who's not Darth Snoke, is Commander Snoke, or the first in command of like people on the First Order station, that Nazi guy. And so like, okay, why are we being told that he has any authority? It just seems like just because he's a Force user, he's allowed to behave in a fashion kind of similar to Darth Vader, except for Darth Vader had more fucking authority than Kylo Ren. I mean, this shit is dumb. Okay, now the fucking landscapers are coming through. We can't win, but I should wrap this up. So, Rogue One sort of gets to cheat in that you know what's at stake, you know what's going on, you know who the rebellion is, you know who the Empire is, you know who Grand Moff Tarkin is, you know what the Death Star is. Meanwhile, you don't know what the Star Killer is. You don't know where they got it. You don't know who the First Order is. You don't know why the rebellion had 30 years to be the Republic, and now they're the Resistance and wearing rebellion emblems, but they're the Resistance, and you don't know why they have the resources of the rebellion, not the resources of a republic. Like, okay, who cut the balls off the Republic, or why did the Republic never gather any balls in the 30 years since fucking episode 6? What the fuck is going on? Nobody knows. Nobody says. There's not even clunky expositional dialogue like there is in the prequel. There's fucking nothing. So there's so much in episode 7 that people who hate it hate about it that I would be willing to forgive if the movie would set up fucking anything. And it doesn't. And you know what? It's only okay in CGI. Like, it's alright CGI. And it's only, it's bad. Episode 7 is very poor in cinematography. All the shots are extreme close-ups, which mirrors the sort of stagnation of, not stagnation, the lack of information. The fact that all these shots of all this crazy action is shaky cam, Jason Bourne close-ups, like Kylo Ren is filmed like from the back of his head, like fucking this, and you're like, what the fuck? Like, I can't tell what's going on. Meanwhile, the shots of Rogue One are beautiful, just far back, that constantly portray the scope of the conflict, the size of what's at stake, the power and oppression of the Empire always being shot from above, raining death on people. And, and the scenes with Darth Vader are brilliant. The scenes with fucking Grand Moff Tarkin ordering around and bossing around his enemies are brilliant. And in the film, instead of adding plot holes to the Star Wars movie, Rogue One closes several plot holes in the Star Wars movie in an honest attempt to rectify and justify the original storyline. It serves a tremendous purpose, and it all makes sense, even if some of it is dumb and prevents it from being perfect. As an action movie, what Rogue One is trying to be is just a raw action movie. It succeeds as well as any action movie that I have seen in the past several years. It's Mad Max Fury Road level triumph, okay? So I cannot recommend Rogue One enough if you haven't seen it. And I think that it's just further proof that I was right about Episode 7. That Episode 7 is a tremendous pile of shit. Festering, nasty-ass shit. It's gross. It sucks. And if you somehow think that Rogue One and Episode 7 are on a par with each other, you're fucking wrong, and you know nothing about filmmaking, and you have extremely low standards. And you should feel bad. Thanks for watching.